now closed, crops cannot be exported from them. Russia's exports, well, they're impacted for a different reason: Western sanctions. And this is the collective effect. Wheat prices are up 40% this month, and some of the world's poorest countries may bear the brunt of this. For example, Yemen. There's been a war there since 2014, and it imports almost all of its wheat. And more than a third of those imports come from Russia and Ukraine. These imports are lifelines. Bread is thought to make up over half of the calorie intake for the average household. Here's the head of the World Food Programme.
Already the World Food Program, before the Ukrainian crisis, we were buying 50% of our wheat, our commodities, right here in Ukraine. It helps, this bread basket helps us feed the world. Yemen, Ethiopia, Syria, and I can go on and on.
That's wheat, and it's far from the only export affected by this war. Take sunflowers. They're one of the national symbols of Ukraine. It's the largest exporter of sunflower oil in the world, and this is a product that's very widely used for crisps, for many fast foods, and of course many of us use it at home. Pressure on exports, well, that's already led to scenes like this in Turkey, where shortages sparked panic buying. One other example I could give you is fertilizer. Russia supplies 25% of the key nutrients that are used to make fertilizers. But now the Kremlin wants producers to halt exports. Here's the head of one of the world's biggest fertilizer firms.
Half of the world's population gets food as a result of fertilizer. If that's removed from the field, for some crops, they will drop by 50% in the first season. So it's a vital part of the food security for the whole world.
All of these examples undermine what we've just heard called food security, or in other words, they undermine that communities or even countries have reliable, stable sources of food. And if food security goes, political instability can follow. The Financial Times reported recently a jump in grain prices in 2009-10 is regarded as one of the triggers of the Arab Spring uprisings in the Middle East. Or much more recently, this week there have been protests in southern Iraq over food prices. The government has directly blamed the conflict in Ukraine. And because of Russian and Ukrainian exports being affected by this war, in turn, some countries are reducing or even banning their own food exports in order to protect their own supplies. Serbia, for example, on Wednesday it blocked exports of wheat, corn, flour and cooking oil. Here's its president.
In one day, we had a request for a quarter of our total reserves. In just one day. There is such a demand for cereals. Prices have gone to heaven. Everyone must provide bread for the population. That is why we have taken such measures.
Now, food prices were already rising before this war began. COVID, supply chain disruption and energy prices have all contributed to a rising cost of living. In January, the UN reported that global food prices jumped 28% in 2021 to their highest level in a decade. That was before the invasion. And now that war has come, neither Ukraine or Russia can supply the world as they once did. And further price rises and further supply chain disruption appear inevitable.